Today, we're going to talk about a comedy, drama, and fantasy movie called About Time.
For more videos like this, subscribe and click the notification bell.
The Lake family lives happily in a seaside house. There is a mother, Mary, who is always busy, always active, father, James, attractive yet vague, Uncle Desmond, with his clumsy son, Tim, free-spirited daughter, Catherine or Kit Kat. Every year, they have a New Year's Eve party with family and friends. At this year's party, Tim was awkwardly dragged around by his friend Jay and strode through the crowd. During the countdown to the new year, the girl he was dancing with, Polly, leans for a kiss, but he waves her hand instead, disappointing her. The next day, Tim wakes up with embarrassment and a terrible hangover. He is summoned to his father's study. His father James tells Tim he will tell the secret about who he is. He didn't tell anyone. According to James, men born into her family, including Tim, can come back time, but it is limited to one's lifetime. He cannot go to a past he has not experienced or a place he has not been to. To do this, you need to go to a dark place, like a large closet, and think about where and when you want to go. Unsurprisingly, Tim thinks this is a joke. He shook his head at his father, thinking he was pulling his leg. To prove that's not true, Tim goes into the closet and thinks about New Year's Eve party last night. Later, he emerges from the closet and is surprised to find that he is wearing yesterday's clothes. Music and conversation echo from below. He goes downstairs and is quickly dragged in by Jay to dodge the table he knocked over earlier. On the countdown, he kisses Polly, who reacts with dizziness. Tim then returns to the closet and travels to the present. He discovers time travel is real and listens to his father's story. Ability to discover that James seems to have so much time for her. James advises Tim not to use her ability for money or power, so Tim decides to use it to find her love. That summer, Kit Kat invites her boyfriend's cousin Charlotte to stay at the beach house for 2 months. One afternoon, as the family sunbathes with guests, Tim wants to see Charlotte's good side. Seeing an opportunity, Tim agreed to let Charlotte rub her sunscreen on her back, but ended up spilling her bottle on her. Humiliated, he goes back in time and acts more casually and deliberately. Over the summer, Tim tries to impress Charlotte, but always fails until it's too late for her. And finally, it's Charlotte's last day in the house. The night before she leaves, Tim wants to confess his feelings to her, but when he realizes Kit Kat has already warned Charlotte that he might do so, he can't. Was shot dead immediately before. Charlotte thinks things might have been different if she had spoken to her at his home last night. The thought gives him an idea. Midsummer, Tim goes back in time and confesses to Charlotte, but this time, Charlotte told him to ask her out again on their last night at their house. This confirms that he never had a chance with Charlotte no matter what. Eventually, Tim gives up on her pursuit. The day after Charlotte leaves, Tim leaves home and moves to London to stay at James' friend Harry's house. Tim is looking forward to a new chapter in his life, but he is disappointed to find out Harry is a short-lived playwright. In his first 6 months, Tim had no luck in love and launched his career. Lawyers usually refer him to other men. His luck changed one night when Jay took him to Dan's Le Noir, a restaurant where guests dined in complete darkness. Here, we are sitting next to a woman named Mary and her friend Joanna. In the dark, Tim and Mary get to know each other and have a good time. After dinner, Tim and Jay finally meet the girls. Tim was stunned to see Mary, and it's clear that sparks flew when the couple looked at each other. She gives him her phone number before they part. Tim hops home, only to be greeted by Harry's annoyed grunts. The opening of his play was ruined because the lead actor forgot his lines. To make things better, Tim travels back in time and goes to the theater with Harry just before opening night. He approaches the main character, Tom, and convinces him to practice his lines. It works, but another actor forgets the lines instead. Tim goes back in time and helps him. The play turned out to be a success, but when Tim looks at his phone, he sees that Mary's number is gone. His time travel has erased a beautiful night with Mary. Tim is distraught and joins an ecstatic Harry for breakfast the next day. Harry shares the newspaper. Tim found an ad for a Kate Moss show in town. He remembers that Mary is a fan of Kate Moss and spends her week at her exhibition in hopes of meeting her. A full week after her Mary finally came in, and Tim nervously approached her. However, their exchange does not go smoothly, and it turns out that Mary has a boyfriend named Rupert. Tim learns that Mary met Rupert at Joanna's party. He learns the details of the party and travels back in time to prevent it. Tim arrives at Joanna's apartment and convinces Mary to leave the party before Rupert arrives. Mary hesitates a little, but feels her magnetism draw her to him. As they leave, they pass Rupert, who has unknowingly passed by his supposed future girlfriend. Meanwhile, the two have a nice dinner where they get to know each other better. Finally, Tim takes Mary home and she invites him to her own apartment. The atmosphere heats up, and they take the date to the bedroom. But after clumsily tripping over Mary's shoes and struggling to remove her bra, Tim has an awkward first sexual encounter with Mary. He decides to go back in time, and this time skips Mary's shoes and quickly undresses her. All is well this time, but Tim knows he can do better. After Tim's many tries, the couple share their first night of perfect passion. In the months that followed, their relationship continued to blossom, and the couple eventually moved in together. While at the theater with his colleague named Rory, Tim runs into Charlotte, but the conversation quickly becomes awkward. He tries again, but it doesn't work. On her third attempt, he decided to stay away from her, and instead, Charlotte found him and started a conversation. Charlotte invites him to dinner, where she regrets turning him down in the past. Charlotte asks him to take her to her apartment and tries to let her in, but Tim refuses. If he can turn down her first love, Tim can realize how much he loves Mary. He comes home and wakes her up to propose. It doesn't end as romantically as he expected, so he repeats it. The second time she says yes. This summer, Tim took Mary home to see her parents. Mary and her mother are good friends, and Tim spends a lot of time with his father. Surprisingly, Kit Kat, who had a terrible time in London, is also back home. The announcement of Tim and Mary's wedding and Mary's pregnancy infuriates the Lake family. Their wedding was filled with romance and laughter, but there was a storm between the ceremony and the reception. The wind ripped the tent and blew it away, forcing everyone to hide inside. Tim goes back in time and changes his best man when Rory, Harry and Jay mess up their speeches, until he finally chooses his father. A few months later, Mary gives birth to a daughter, Posey. Tim is intriguing about his parenting experience, both in its precious moments and its hardships. They are moving into a new house, and it will soon be Posey's first birthday. All the guests, including Harry and Laurie, but Kit Kat is late for the party. The doorbell rings and Tim answers. But it's not Kit Kat. It's his troublesome friend Jimmy. He and Kit Kat got into an altercation earlier in the day, resulting in Kit Kat driving alone. Kit Kat had been drinking earlier that day and had a car accident on the way there. Hoping to save her, Tim travels back in time to pick her up from her house instead, but that doesn't solve the problem. Kit Kat has a drinking problem due to her unhappy relationship with Jimmy. Tim wants to talk and get in touch with her sister. When that doesn't work, he brings Kit Kat back in time during the New Year's Eve party where she met Jimmy. But instead of flirting with her Jimmy, she takes an inadvertent rant on him and hits him, even though he doesn't remember her in this timeline. The brothers return to the present, and Kit Kat soon realizes her feelings for Jay. This time, she's dating Jay instead, and their relationship is better than before with Jimmy. After saving her sister's life and happiness, Tim returns home to find that he has a son instead of his daughter Posey. His heart sinks at the sudden realization. Soon, he goes into the closet and travels back in time to when his son was born to talk to James. James confirms that if you make changes before your own child is born, you are more likely to conceive another child. If you want to protect Posey, you can't change what happened before she was born. Unable to come to terms with the loss of her daughter as she knew it, Tim goes back in time again to undo the changes Kit Kat has made to her life, until her car accident occurs. While Kit Kat is in the hospital, Tim and Mary stay by her side until she recovers. With her support, Kit Kat is determined to change her life for the better. Recalling an alternate timeline where she is happy with Jay, Tim suggests Kit Kat meet him. Tim has just returned from the hospital and is enjoying being with his daughter. Her happiness prompts him to have another child. Despite Mary's initial protests, they conceived her son 2 years after her. One night, Tim helps Mary prepare for a meeting with her company's best-selling authors, but they accidentally leave Posey behind her downstairs, where she takes her manuscript. Tim tries to solve the problem by time travel, But their night is interrupted by a phone call from his mother announces that James has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Tim, Mary and Kit Kat visit the beach house where Tim talks to his father. Their time travel cannot cure him of cancer without risking giving birth to Tim and Kit Kat. After all, time travel cannot solve everything life throws at them. James gives Tim a much more important lesson in their skill. The first is to live as normally as possible despite the daily tensions. Secondly, after experiencing the day for the first time, he should go back and experience it again. A moment in his life while realizing how sweet the world can be. Tim follows his advice and finds happiness in both the routine and special moments of life. But there are still days, like his Father's Day, that he doesn't want to remember that he died. Not ready to say goodbye, Tim travels back in time to visit his still living father. After James' death, Tim consoles him that he can visit his father whenever he misses him. But one day, Mary decided she wanted a third child. Tim is hesitant to learn that she won't be able to visit his father with a third child once again. After much thought, he decided to let go of the past and move on to the future. He then agrees to have another child. A few months later, Mary is heavily pregnant and she is due to give birth to her soon. This is Tim's last chance to visit his father in the past. He travels back in time and plays ping pong with his father one last time. When James sees the sadness in Tim's eyes, he realizes that this will be the last time they are together. He accepts this and makes it known that he agrees with his son's decision. As a reward, they both travel back in time to Tim's childhood. Now that James and Tim have more health and energy, this will be the last time they run or play on the beach. Tim says a final goodbye to his father and returns to the present with the birth of his third child. As the years pass, Tim lives a normal life, sharing both laughter and tears with his family. He completes her family with Mary, and Kit Kat also has children. One morning, he puts Mary to bed and enjoys preparing breakfast for her children. Tim decides to never travel through time again and live each day as if it were a second experience. This time, the focus is on valuing his life, from big events to small details. For more videos like this, subscribe and click the notification bell, and don't forget to hit the like button. Also, you can check our other videos. Enjoy and take care.